Blog Talk Radio. Welcome to the Institute for Personal Development, Kriya Yoga Ashram, where total consciousness is the new frontier.
Kriya Yoga is union of the individual with the divine. Join us as we explore the practices to initiate this process.
Good morning. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. Let's Talk Consciousness. I am your hostess, Lisa Winton, and with me is Kenny Toy, also known as Swami Jayananda, founder of the Institute for Personal Development, located here in Hampton, New Hampshire. Good morning, Swami. Thank you for being here today. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing pretty good today. How about you?
Well, I'm doing pretty good today, thanks. And I want to thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Today on the Voice of Yoga, we will talk about the therapeutic approach to yoga. We will look at using some of the strategies found in the science of yoga in an integrative way with Western medical practices. Listen as we review some of the differences between a therapeutic variation and the spiritual science of yoga. Yoga as a diagnostic and restorative tool, a blend of Western and Eastern theories. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. We are talking consciousness, and join the Kriya Yoga Spiritual Advance, get the light in your soul, and transcend physical limitations. So, Swami, a bunch of the information I have is from the International Association of Yoga Therapists, and they have a slogan that says, Bridging Yoga and Healthcare. And I thought that was very interesting, and I wanted to get your take on that slogan.
Yeah, that hits me on many different levels. You know, the first thing I think about, the whole thing of bridging yoga with the Western medical model, but also the whole thing of bridging yoga with insurance and treating yoga more as a business and opening it up to third-party billing kind of a thing that, it has its place. I can't say that I have a problem with it at all. And even the whole thing of bridging yoga with healthcare and maybe making it more of a therapeutic tool that would comply with Western medical regulations. Things like licensing and credentialing and all of that kind of stuff. Certifying and that's all part of the business aspect of it, and I think there's a place for it. But I also think it's really important to understand that it's different than yoga as a spiritual science, and that's what I really think I want to try and get across in this radio show. Linking yoga with Western medical procedures or the whole Western medical model isn't really an upgrade of yoga. That yoga, by the original standard that it was set as a spiritual science, surpasses the goals and objectives of the Western medical model, which is basically, attaining physical health as opposed to spiritual enlightenment.
Yeah, because I would think that yoga is supposed to, years ago when it was codified, I would imagine that it was supposed to be able to bridge the human with their divinity, and not necessarily now where everybody's on this healthcare bandwagon. Well, let's try to get yoga into that mainstream. That's what it kind of seems to me, and it seems like it's just a really way off point from its original intention.
Well, I really like what George Bernard Shaw had said many years ago, and I'm paraphrasing it, but it was something to the effect of, we have not lost faith in God. We have just transferred it to the medical profession. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what has happened. And we've really lost the benefit that comes when one literally leans on the infinite, when we have this joining or bridging or relinking ourselves with the divine law seeking expression.
I want to read you a paragraph from that same website I mentioned earlier, the International Association of Yoga Therapists. And the statement is, this tradition recognizes that the human being's essential nature is unchanging awareness that exists in relationship to and identification with the changing phenomena of the empirical world. What is your take on that?
Yeah, I would agree with it to some extent. That I do agree with the whole thing that, our essential nature is unchanging. But I don't agree with the goals and objectives of the International Association of Yoga Therapists, because the intention of spiritual science of yoga begins with transcendence of the identity from the empirical to the unchanging. See, it's not just a question of saying that, okay, we have this unchanging aspect. It's really, and remain embroiled in the visible and tangible, or the invisible and tangible, which are the ever-changing aspects. The goal of yoga was to join with the unchanging aspect. And of course, the benefits that come with that are enormous, that you miss if you don't include that in your system or your approach to yoga.
Well, there's another paragraph I would like to review with you as well. And this one states, the yoga tradition views humans as a multidimensional system that includes all aspects of body, breath, and mind, intellect, and emotions, and their mutual interaction. Yoga is founded on the basic principle that intelligent practice can positively influence the direction of change within these human dimensions, which are distinct from an individual's unchanging nature or spirit. The practices of yoga traditionally include, but are not limited to, asana, pranayama, meditation, mantra, chanting, mudra, ritual, and a disciplined lifestyle.
Yeah, see, again, what you're doing is you're taking yoga, which was codified in 8 essential stages, and you're modifying it. There's no mention here of yama and niyama. And really, it's the yamas and the niyamas that expand a practice of yoga into a path of action, a path of knowledge, a path of devotion, that it really requires this union of the individual with the divine. And also, by contrast, a spiritual science of yoga uses a 3-body system. They use a physical body, they use the astral mental body, which is really defined with your chakra system, and then they use the whole causal spiritual body. And to really understand yoga, you really want to try and understand the role of the causal spiritual body. And that is what is oftentimes overlooked, because the causal spiritual body is a template for a perfect, whole, physical body that is healthy, harmonious, and free.
Well, that's interesting, because they did say in that paragraph, they say that yoga is founded on a basic principle that intelligent practice can positively influence the direction of change. So I think it's interesting they use the word intelligence. I wonder, do they mean mind?
Well, there again, there's a difference between your 3rd house lower mind and your 9th house higher mind. And so just using intelligence, oftentimes, we're really dealing with what most people have accepted is what I call energy work. The whole thing of being able to affect changes by changing our thinking, understanding the relationship between thought and physical reality. Now, that is, as Mary Baker Eddy says, that is an upgrade from the old drug system, recognizing the importance of the mind. But it's really not the end-all, be-all. It's not the best. That the whole concept of spiritual healing is different than doing it using dualistic methods.
I know we've had several conversations about energy work is not spiritual practice, it's not spiritual work. So even if somebody is doing a hands-on healing and they're praying to their divinity during this work, during this therapy session, it still isn't really a spiritual healing. It's energy work healing, right? I mean, so I think some people have a hard time distinguishing what it is we mean by that, energy work or energy healing versus spiritual healing.
Yeah, the thing is, positive thinking has its place. Again, it's not spiritual healing. And probably an example of that is that if your car breaks down and you use positive thinking, then basically you take the bus with a positive attitude. If you're using spiritual methods, then you fix the car and you drive to work. And the whole thing of being able to recognize the role of the causal spiritual body in relation to shaping our physical reality. It's an exact science.
Now, I have a quote here that I picked up from their website too, and I want you to compare this to what we do in the asana classes. And it says here, yoga therapy adapts the practice of yoga to the needs of people with specific or persistent health problems not usually addressed in a group class. I know our approach to sauna may be different than what some of the other, what's being taught out there in other systems. So can you give us what you feel that statement should be or should mean?
Well, again, it seems that they are more structured in the area of physical performance of the asana, how to cue postures, how to sequence them, how to keep everyone safe, understand goals and objectives. And that's different from those systems of asana that are more just do what you feel kind of a thing that doesn't have that kind of infrastructure, or on the other side of that, the more aggressive approaches that seem to lean towards the no pain, no gain kind of approach, where you have people pushing you into a posture and trying to get your foot on your head kind of a thing. But I don't think anybody really can exceed what BKS Iyengar did with asana as far as procedure and intention of the postures, and the whole thing of building postures with, this specific goal of internal support, the whole relationship between muscles and bones, which is, what we basically designed our asana program after, but we took it to the next level, and we included all of this internal mental work. Now takes an asana class and makes it a yoga class, because you're training your mind to serve spirit and you're training your body to receive the image for validation. That bypasses a lot of the mental work of basically trying to reconstruct a new image for your particular body.
Good, great. Thank you for that clarification. But I think we're going to pause right here to hear a word from our sponsors. So listeners, we'll be back with you in a few moments. Kriya Yoga Theory 2 is a unique and revolutionary practice and forum designed to facilitate the growth process in human development. Apotheosis is a real experience and has an evidence procedure. You cannot lead someone to permanent change by doing for them what they must do themselves. Personal accountability and responsibility are the foundation of Kriya Yoga Theory 2. You must be engaged and devoted. Prana power brings virtue to overcome fear, wisdom to overcome ignorance, purpose to overcome selfishness, enthusiasm to overcome laziness. Kriya Yoga is a path of action, knowledge, and devotion. These sessions are a celestial positioning system to guide the individual into union with the divine. For more information or to sign up for your next session online, go to www.ipdtransform.com. Namaste. Welcome back. For those of you just joining us, you're listening to The Voice of Yoga, and we are talking consciousness. So, Swami, I have a statement here. I want to get your thoughts on it. And here it is. Yoga therapy cannot only be preventative or curative, but also serves a means to manage the illness. And there's just something about that phrase, managing the illness, that, quite honest with you, kind of disturbs me a little bit. It's kind of like that Western medical model of pain management. So managing our illness, it almost seems like that really cements the fact that we have an illness. And then where do we go from there?
Right, because that's a limiting mortal belief. And so that's where understanding yoga as a spiritual science and the role of this concept of transcendence is such an important thing that there's a difference between curing and healing. And like we always say, the origins of the word to heal means to be whole. And the only way that we can really be whole is by this union of the individual with the divine. And when you start out and you don't have this union with the divine, it's kind of like what C.S. Lewis had said. If you're driving somewhere and you miss your turn, if you continue to go in the direction you're going, you may not be getting closer to your destination. That it's not just about driving. It is about knowing where you're going. That's why yoga in its original format is a path of action. It's a path of knowledge. It's a path of devotion. It's not just about doing, but it's about knowing and doing. And then to understand that your goal here is what they call true consciousness. With true consciousness comes perfect health. So that you're not just hacking at the branches of your problem. You're not just trying to manage disease, illness, but you are basically looking to renew your entire being.
Well, I came across a statement that kind of describes to me what the practice of yoga, real yoga can really do for you. So what's interesting, though, is that they say it's about yoga therapy. And the statement is, yoga therapy is that facet of the ancient science of yoga that focuses on health and wellness at all levels of the person, physical, psychological, and spiritual. Yoga therapy focuses on the path of yoga as a healing journey that brings balance to the body and mind through an experiential understanding of the primary intention of yoga, awakening of spirit, our essential nature. So it sounds like it's pretty close to describing what yoga can do for a person if they practice it. The science of yoga with the 8 essential stages. And what's interesting is that they say that's what yoga therapy is doing. So it's almost kind of like, buyer beware. Make sure you know what it is that you're looking for in a yoga practice, and then really understand what it is that you're getting yourself into. Is it real yoga, or is it yoga therapy pretending to be yoga science? Very confusing.
Well, again, I mean, that's why I really think that it's the responsibility of the organization Yoga Alliance to really help define what yoga is, because it's just such a broad topic today. And you can't take something that is an exact spiritual science of yoga with these 8 essential stages and then modify it, dilute it, turn it, take parts of it that you think, accommodate your personal goal, and then still promise the same return. That's where I have a problem. And I think if Yoga Alliance had a better system of credentialing and being able to recognize the difference between a secular yoga practice from a true spiritual practice, and then look at, what are the tangible, observable guidelines that you would use? And personally, I think probably one of the best yoga books you could find today is Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures by Mary Baker Eddy. What she has done with Christianity is that she has basically taken all of the belief out of it and converted it into a spiritual science. And basically she says, if you can't demonstrate healing, then you don't understand spirituality. And that's basically what yoga should be. That you should understand that it's not just like a practice that you attach a lot of false claims and exaggerated promises to. That it is an exact science. But if you modify it, if you dilute it, if you change it in any way, then you run a risk. And there's nothing wrong with diversity. I mean, not everybody that practices yoga should be interested in total consciousness. And some people want it as a form of entertainment. Some people want it to manage their symptoms because they don't believe that they can heal. That's all well and good, but it shouldn't be called yoga, is all I'm saying. Mm. If what you're doing doesn't have all 8 essential stages with a way of really understanding, little terms like brahmacharya, carrier Brahmin. I mean, most people think it means being celibate. Mm-hmm. But it's really not until you literally rebirth your body in the life force and you join with this other source of sustenance, do you really understand what that term means? And I love what Mary Baker Eddy said in Science and Health, that she says that when a man is governed by God, the ever-present mind, who understands all things, man knows that with God all things are possible. And so this union of the individual with the divine has merit, has benefit. And it goes way beyond the limits of any Western medical procedure.
Now, I know we've talked before about what she said. I believe that Mary Baker Eddy said something in her book about obeying the physiology and spirit. Can you give us insight on that?
She says on page 182, we cannot obey both physiology and spirit, for one absolutely destroys the other, and the one or the other must be supreme in the affections. That this whole concept, and that's such an erroneous concept that most of us approach our lives with, first of all, we've accepted the Western medical model as our first front line for wellness. And if that fails, then we turn to prayer. But now look at what you just did. You just took Almighty God, endless possibilities out of the equation, and you put this man-made, material, mortal system as your front runner. So the concept of bridging yoga with, healthcare or the Western medical model is not an upgrade. This union of the individual with the divine, the way that it was intended to be used, is superior. And the reason for that is that if you are using matter and mind to try and find wholeness, you're never going to get it. You're working with two forces. It's not until we join with the unified field are we able to actualize this experience of wholeness, which brings perfect health.
So how do we take what she says about the physiology and spirit, and how do we apply that in our yoga practice? What's the conversion there to the practicing the yoga science?
Well, this whole thing of train the mind to serve spirit, train the body to serve the mind. And I like what she also says in Science and Health. Obedience to material law prevents full obedience to spiritual law. This whole thing of loyalty to one's divinity, this relationship that we can have with the divine, is mutually exclusive. And so that misconception that we can use Western medical methods and still draw from the benefit of spirit is a misconception. And the reason for that is that when you start to unbox religion, when you start to unbox yoga and these spiritual sciences, that it isn't magic, but it is physics. That reality is multidimensional. That things are happening on different levels simultaneously. That underlying matter is energy, and underlying energy is the void. If you don't understand what that looks like when you join with it, if you join with one of the inferior systems of sustenance, then you're going to have limitations. There's only one way that this works. There's only one God, there's only one truth, there's only one love, there's only one religion, there's only one truth in life, and everything else was what they called a sin. It missed the mark.
So you're saying that we have to turn everything over to spirit. We have to turn everything over to God, and I mean everything. Our health, our well-being, our spiritual health, our physical health, our mental health, our emotional, everything. We have to turn that to God, because if God is perfect and God is good, and we are made in His image, and therefore we are perfect and we are good, we should need to go to other material means for healing.
Right. In fact, what we find is that prevents us from getting the benefit of this primary relationship.
So I think it's about that time. We do have to start closing down our show for today. What a good show. So I do want to invite your listeners out there to visit the website. It's www.ipdtransform.com. So once you're there, you can post comments or questions about this show. Give us ideas for future shows, too, if you like. And do keep those comments, questions, and curiosities coming, because we do enjoy hearing from you. Be sure to tune in next week. We're going to talk about the full moon in Aries, bringing courage. And don't forget to check out our weekly Facebook Live videos as well. So, Swami, do you have any other final thoughts or comments about today's program?
Well, I would like to encourage people to listen to what we had to say about the difference between yoga therapy and yoga as a spiritual science, because I think it's an important distinction. And also next week, when we talk about the full moon in Aries bringing courage, we'll really go into a lot of the role of fear and how that plays out in sickness and in disease and in sin. And with that, I'll wish everybody a good day.
And thank you for listening to our program, The Voice of Yoga. This is Lisa Winton, along with Swami Jayananda, signing off. Have a wonderful Kriya Yoga kind of day. Namaste.